The nebula bloomed outside the viewport, a silent explosion of violet and emerald fire. It was the only thing of beauty Princess Lyra of the Ilari allowed herself to watch. Everything else in the grand observation lounge of the battle cruiser Glory's Edge was a cage of polished, suffocating diplomacy. She stood alone, a perfect statue carved from alabaster and starlight. Her robes, woven with threads of living, shifting metal, fanned out around her feet. Her silver-white hair was bound in the complex, severe style of the Ilari royal court. She was, by every measure of the galaxy, the most beautiful creature in 10,000 light-years. And she was a prisoner. They called it diplomatic captivity, a polite word for a hostage exchange. Her decaying Ilari dominion had offered her up, their most prized and useless relic, to secure a truce with the new, loud, ambitious power of the Terran Federation. She was the guarantee of peace and a symbol of her empire's weakness. Her Ilari guards stood 20 paces back, their faces hidden by emotionless crimson-lacquered helmets. They were her protectors and her jailers. The Terran diplomats, clad in their functional, ugly uniforms, would stroll past, their eyes lingering on her. They saw a prize, a trophy of a war they had won without firing a final shot. Her own people saw her as a sacrifice, a relic of a past they were desperate to save, even as it crumbled around them. Lyra saw only the bars of her cage. They were invisible, but they were made of protocol, of ancient bloodlines, and of the agonizing, cold calculation that had been her only companion since birth. She had been bred for this, to be looked at, to be bartered, to be cold. She turned from the nebula, her violet eyes, the signature of her line, sweeping the room. She catalogued the weaknesses of the Terran attachés, the desperation of her own counselors. She was isolated, but she was not idle. She was a weapon waiting for a war, forced to endure a terrible, boring peace. Far below, in the guts of the Glory's Edge, the ship smelled of ozone, recycled air, and stale, bitter coffee. Cole Draven leaned against a bulkhead, his scuffed boot tapping a restless rhythm on the metal deck. He was a man made of mismatched functional parts. His hair was too long, a dark, unruly mess. A 3-day stubble shadowed his jaw, and his eyes, a startling clear gray, held a profound, weary cynicism. He wore the black fatigues of a Federation asset, not the dress uniform of an officer, and the clothes looked like they'd been slept in. Often, he was, by every measure, a disaster, and he was the most dangerous man on the ship. The mission parameters remain unchanged. Draven, Admiral Thorne said. The Admiral's hologram shimmered on the bulkhead, his face a mask of military disapproval. Thorne hated Draven. Draven's very existence, a cynical ex-mercenary, a survivor of the Koros massacre, now a Federation asset on a leash, was an insult to the Admiral's neat, orderly universe. "The parameters are insane," Cole replied, his voice a low growl. He didn't look at the hologram. He was studying a schematic on his wrist comp. The Ilari vaults are a myth wrapped in a fairy tale, and they're guarded by Varzoon. The beast is a scare tactic, Draven, Ilari propaganda to protect their secrets, and we have intel. "You have rumors," Cole cut in. "I've heard the rumors. Half biological, half AI. Wipes out battalions. No, thank you. I prefer my impossible missions to be only 50% impossible." "This isn't a request." Thorne's voice went cold. "This is a direct initiative. The civil unrest on Elar Prime is reaching critical mass. If the Dominion collapses, that vault tech, whatever it is, cannot fall into the wrong hands. Your job is to get eyes on it, identify it, secure it if possible." "And the princess?" Cole asked, his thumb tracing the outline of the grand ballroom on his schematic. Is she part of the secure if possible package? Princess Kalyra is a diplomatic concern. You will not engage with her. You will not look at her. You will maintain your cover as supplemental station security. Your window is the ball tonight. While everyone is distracted by the relic, you will access the main diplomatic archive via the service ducts and pinpoint the vault's true coordinates. Am I clear? Cole sighed, a long rattling exhalation. As mud. Don't worry. Admiral, I'll be invisible. He cut the connection, plunging the small alcove into near darkness, lit only by the red emergency light strips. He rolled his shoulder, wincing as old scar tissue pulled tight. He'd survived impossible missions before. The secret was that he'd never cared about surviving them. He just cared about finishing the job. This time, the job was a ghost, and the only real thing in the equation was a princess bred to be perfect, floating in a sea of sharks. He hated this job. He pushed off the wall and began walking toward the service ducts, a scruffy, dangerous ghost moving through the arteries of the palace ship. The Grand Coriolis Ballroom was a masterpiece of gravitational architecture. The ceiling was a kilometer-high dome of smart glass, revealing the slow, majestic turn of the glory's edge against the backdrop of the Anterian star field. Swarms of crystalline lights drifted through the air, their chimes providing a discordant harmony to the complex, 17-beat rhythm of the Alari royal anthem. Alari nobles in their metallic, high-collared robes mingled stiffly with Terran officers in their stark blue and gold dress uniforms. The tension was a living thing, a predator pacing the room, sharp-fanged and polite. Kalyra stood near the central dais, a cup of chilled nectar in her hand. She had not taken a sip. Her senior counselor, a withered, hawk-nosed Alari named Vorek, was murmuring at her side. You must smile, Highness. The Terran ambassador is watching. He needs to see that you are pleased with the truce. I am pleased, Kalyra said, her voice like spun ice. I am a beacon of pleasure, Vorek. Can you not feel the waves of joy radiating from my person? Vorek flinched. Highness, this is not the time for irony. When, then, is the time? She asked, her gaze drifting over the crowd. It was a sea of false faces, of predators and prey swapping masks. And then, she saw him. He was a tear in the fabric of the scene. He stood near a service entrance, trying to look like a statue and failing miserably. His dress uniform was a disgrace. It was the right color, but it hung on his frame as if it had been borrowed from a larger, more optimistic man. He was scruffy, ill-kept, and he was staring at her. Not at her, Kalyra corrected. He was staring at the security panel behind her. Most men looked at her with awe, with reverence, or with a poorly disguised hunger. This man looked at her like she was a piece of furniture blocking his view. A flicker of something dangerously unfamiliar curiosity stirred beneath her armor. Cole felt her eyes on him a second before she moved. He'd been 5 minutes from the archive, just waiting for the ceremonial guard change, and now the entire diplomatic payload was walking straight toward him. He suppressed a groan and snapped his gaze away from the panel, pasting on a look of bored, professional security. She stopped 2 feet from him. She was taller than he'd expected. Or maybe it was just the rigid, regal way she held herself. Up close, her beauty was absurd. It was inhuman, perfect to the point of being unsettling. Her skin was flawless, her violet eyes deep-set and luminous. She smelled like cold air and something metallic, like a storm. You are Terran, she stated. It was not a question. It was an accusation. Last time I checked, Cole said, his voice carefully neutral. He kept his eyes on the wall just over her shoulder. Can I help you, Princess? Your presence here is unscheduled. Your uniform is lacking. You are staring at restricted access panels. Give me one reason why I should not have my guards reduce you to your component molecules." Her voice was low, melodic, and held the unmistakable ring of absolute authority. He could feel her Alari guards shifting behind her, their energy weapons humming on standby. He finally met her gaze. He looked into those perfect violet eyes and gave her the one thing no one else in the room would: the truth. "I'm just enjoying the zoo, Princess." He let his eyes rake over the opulent, tense room. Lots of pretty cages, lots of exotic animals. But you're the main attraction. They've got you in the nice glass enclosure right in the middle. A flicker. For 1/10 of a second, the ice in her eyes cracked. He saw something move behind it. Rage. No. Recognition. Then it was gone. Sealed over. Colder than before. "Savage," she whispered. The word was sharp, a sliver of glass. "You humans are all the same. You see history, and you call it a cage. You see elegance, and you call it weakness. You are children playing with plasma cannons." "Maybe," Cole said, shifting his weight. He was done with this. The guard change was happening. But children know a trap when they see one. You're standing in the middle of the trigger. He'd meant it as a barb, a parting shot. He never got to see her reaction. The world dissolved. It wasn't a sound. It was a lack of sound. The complex Ilari music, the murmur of the crowd, the chime of the light swarms, all of it was sucked into a vacuum, a microsecond of absolute silence. Then, the explosion. A sheet of white-hot plasma vented from the main concourse, instantly vaporizing a dozen Terran delegates and their Ilari hosts. The ballroom's smart glass ceiling fractured, spiderwebbing with a scream of tortured metal. Emergency shields snapped into place, but they were too slow. Kaylira was thrown backward, the force of the blast ripping her from her feet. But before she hit the deck, a hand, rough and calloused, grabbed the front of her ceremonial robes. Cole hadn't dived for cover. He'd moved toward her. He used her as a counterweight, spinning them both behind a thick decorative plinth as a second, more targeted explosion ripped through the dais where she had been standing. "Vorek!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "He's gone! Princess!" Cole yelled over the sudden deafening shriek of the station's alarm. Blaster fire erupted from across the room. It wasn't chaos. It was coordinated. Kaylira's crimson-helmed Ilari guards were not protecting the survivors. They were executing them. They formed a firing line, cutting down Terrans and their own Ilari counselors. They are traitors," Kaylira breathed, her mind struggling to catch up. "Looks like a coup," Cole shouted. He pulled his sidearm, a heavy utilitarian Federation blaster, and fired 2 precise shots. 2 of her guards crumpled, their helmets shattering. From the other side of the room, Federation security troops burst in, their armor sealed. They saw the carnage. They saw the Ilari guards firing, and they saw Princess Kaylira, alive and unharmed, next to a scruffy, unofficial security man who had just killed 2 of her retinue. "They're together!" one of the Federation soldiers yelled, leveling his rifle. "It's a trap! The princess and the merc! Take them down!" "Oh, perfect!" Cole spat. He grabbed Kaylira's arm. This time, not gently. "My day just keeps getting better." "Unhand me, savage!" Kaylira tried to plant her feet, her royal conditioning screaming at her. "No time!" He shoved her toward the service door he'd been watching. "Your people just tried to kill you. My people are about to return the favor. Unless you want to be a martyr for a broken truce, you're with me." He didn't wait for an answer. He kicked the service door's manual release. It hissed open, revealing a dark, metal grid corridor. He shoved her through, firing back into the ballroom to cover their retreat. "You are framing me." Kaylira stumbled, her metal-woven robes catching on a pipe. We just got framed together, Princess, now move. They ran. The station rocked around them, its internal gravity failing, then catching again, throwing them against the walls. Alarms blared, a maddening, repetitive pulse. They were no longer royalty and an agent. They were just two targets, running for their lives. They burst into a small, private hangar bay, reserved for diplomatic skimmers. Cole shot the lock on the nearest one, a sleek, obsidian-colored vessel. The cockpit hissed open. Get in! I am not. I will shoot you in the leg and drag you in. Cole snarled, his face inches from hers. The cynicism was gone, replaced by a terrifying, cold focus. I don't care about your titles. I care about that bulkhead door which is going to have a dozen soldiers on the other side of it in 10 seconds. Kalira looked at his clear gray eyes. He meant it. She had never in her entire life been spoken to this way. She had also never been in this much danger. She climbed into the skimmer, her movements stiff with fury and fear. Cole jumped into the pilot's seat, his hands flying across the unfamiliar Ilari controls. Ancient tech, he muttered. But the ignition sequence is universal. Hold on. The engines whined, a high-pitched scream. The hangar door behind them exploded inward, revealing a squad of Federation Marines. Do not fire! That's a Federation! The squad leader started, but Cole had already slammed the accelerator. The skimmer shot out of the bay, scraping the edges of the frame, and into open space. Behind them, the Glory's edge was venting atmosphere from a dozen wounds, a dying, glittering whale in the black, a handful of small, fast pursuit ships detached from its hull, turning to follow them. They are shooting at us, Kalira stated, her knuckles white on the console. Yes, that's what pursuit generally means. Cole wrestled with the controls. The skimmer was fast, but it wasn't a fighter. A plasma bolt lanced past their cockpit, shaking the small ship violently. Where are you going? She demanded. Away, he yelled. Right now. Away is the only plan. Another hit, this one striking an engine pod. The skimmer shuddered, and the engine's scream turned into a dying, grinding groan. They have damaged our port manifold, Kalira said, her eyes scanning the console. She was, Cole noted with a strange, detached part of his brain. Surprisingly calm now that the dying had started. Yeah, I got that, thanks. The controls were dead. The closest gravity well was a large, angry-looking moon swirling with green and purple clouds. We're caught. Brace. The skimmer, helpless, was snagged by the moon's gravity. It fell, tumbling end over end, into the thick, churning atmosphere. The pursuit ships pulled back, unwilling to follow them into the roiling, poisonous storm. The crash was a symphony of destruction. It was the sound of 1,000 trees screaming as they were torn apart, of metal folding like paper, of alarms dying in a cascade of sparks. The ship ripped through the dense alien canopy, a meteor of burning privilege and bad luck, before slamming into the soft, swampy earth. Then silence, broken only by the steady drip of an unknown fluid and the alien hiss of the jungle. Cole woke to the smell of chlorophyll and mud. His head felt like it had been split open and stuffed with wet sand. Every joint ached. He tasted blood. He unbuckled his harness and fell, groaning, onto the tilted floor of the cockpit. Princess, he coughed, wiping blood from his mouth. Are you alive, or am I going to have to explain this to your next of kin? A low groan from the co-pilot's seat. Kalira pulled herself upright. Her perfect silver-white hair was undone, plastered to her face with sweat, mud, and a trickle of blue Ilari blood from a cut on her temple. Her metallic robes were torn, her armors of elegance and protocol shattered. She looked wild. She looked human. If you ever, speak to me like that again. Savage, she panted. I will personally tear your tongue from your skull. Good, Cole wheezed, pushing himself to his feet. You're fine. He kicked open the cracked cockpit canopy. The air that hit them was thick, humid, and heavy with the smell of decay and ozone. The jungle was a nightmare of color. Giant, pulsating fungi glowed with a sickly green light. Vines as thick as a man's torso snaked around trees that dripped acidic-looking sap. And the sound. A constant wet clicking, hissing, and chittering, as if the entire forest was alive and watching them. We have to move, Cole said, pulling his blaster from its holster. He checked the charge, 3/4 full. The skimmer's power cell is leaking. It's broadcasting our position to every scavenger, Terran, Ilari, and local nasty in the sector. Kaylira slid gracefully from the wreckage, wincing as her feet hit the unstable ground. And where, in this garden, do you propose we go? As if in answer, a sound rumbled in the distance. It was not a creature. It was the wind, rising to a howl. The green, pulsating fungi began to glow brighter, pulsing with an urgent rhythm. That, Cole said, pointing to the sky, which was turning a deep, sickly purple, is the poisonous storm the travel brochures warned me about. We need shelter. Now. They ran. They half walked, half fell through the mud and grasping vines. The jungle floor was a trap, sucking at their boots, twice. Cole had to pull Kaylira from mud that threatened to swallow her. She, in turn, used a small, sharp vibro knife she'd produced from her boot to cut them free of sentient, grasping vines. They were a ridiculous pair, the princess in her ruined finery and the scruffy soldier in his battered fatigues. They didn't speak. They just survived. Breath by ragged breath. A shadow, fast and multi-limbed, detached itself from a tree ahead. Cole fired, the blaster bolt sizzling into the trunk. The creature, a nightmare of chitin and too many legs, hissed and retreated. It's the storm, Kaylira said, her voice strained. The fauna is agitated. Everything here is agitated, Cole yelled back. The storm hit them. It wasn't rain. It was a deluge, a pounding, horizontal assault of green, electric-laced water that stung their skin. The wind shrieked. There! Cole shouted, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward a dark split in a nearby rock face. It was barely a cave. It was a crevice, a narrow, dark shelter high up on a muddy bank. They fell into it, tumbling over each other, landing in a heap of mud, torn silk, and shared desperation. Outside, the storm howled, a wall of driving, venomous-looking rain. The temperature dropped instantly. The small crevice was dark, cramped, and smelled of wet stone and millennia-old dust. Cole crawled to the entrance, his blaster in hand, and watched the jungle dissolve into a green-tinted blur. Kaylira huddled against the back wall, her entire body shaking. The adrenaline was fading. The cold was setting in. They were trapped on a hostile moon, hunted by two factions. And the only other living person was the one being they had been bred to despise. Cole shifted, turning his back to the storm. He saw her in the gloom, the proud, cold princess. Her facade was gone. Her torn robes, the mud, the way she was trying to hide her shaking. He didn't see a relic. He saw a terrified woman, utterly alone. He looked away, giving her a moment. He rummaged in his utility belt and pulled out a ration bar. He tossed it into her lap. She flinched, looking down at the silver-wrapped package as if it were a snake. Eat it, Cole said, his voice quiet, rough. It tastes like synthesized cardboard, but it's warm. Kaylira just stared at it. She looked up at him, her violet eyes unreadable in the dark. He was checking his blaster, his hands moving with an efficient, practiced economy. He had scars on his knuckles. He was breathing hard, but his gaze was steady, scanning the storm. He looked lost. He looked dangerous. He looked simple. She found her voice, though it came out as a ragged whisper. Do you humans always look this lost when faced with beauty you don't deserve? It was a test. A final, desperate attempt to put the armor back on, to re-establish the hierarchy, to remind him what she was and what he was not. Cole stopped checking his weapon. He didn't look up for a long moment. The only sound was the shriek of the storm and the steady drip of water from the roof of the cave. He slowly raised his head, his clear gray eyes finding hers in the dark. He glanced at her, then down at her right hand, which was hidden in the folds of her ruined robes. He'd seen the glint of the vibro knife she was palming. Only, he replied, his voice flat, when it's staring a knife at my throat. The storm died as quickly as it had been born, leaving the jungle scoured and dripping. The air in their narrow crevice was stale, the silence between them heavy and sharp, like broken glass. Kalira's knife was still in her hand, though she had lowered it. Cole merely watched her, his expression unreadable in the gloom. He had seen the blade. He had called her bluff. We cannot stay here, Kalira said, her voice a low command. She rose, forcing her body to ignore the bruises and the cold. The armor of her royal bearing was the only thing she had left. Your away plan has failed. We need a new one. Agreed, Cole said, rising more slowly. He holstered his blaster and took a deep, pained breath. The skimmer is scrap. The storm probably masked our crash signature for a while, but they'll be back. Terran or Ilari. They'll both be looking. They will not find me, Kalira stated, a lifetime of certainty in her words. They won't find you, Cole corrected, gesturing to her torn, mud-caked robes. They'll be looking for a princess. They won't recognize the survivor. She had no reply for that. She pushed past him, out of the cave and onto the slick, muddy bank. The jungle was different now. The violent fauna had retreated. The air was still heavy and held a strange, resonant hum, like a deep string on a bass instrument, felt more than heard. What is that? Cole said, coming up behind her, his senses on high alert. Kalira tilted her head. She had felt it too, but to her, it was not a threat. It was familiar. A resonance, in the stone, in the air. It is old. She began to walk, not aimlessly, but with a sudden new purpose. She was following the sound, or the feeling, that pulsed beneath their feet. Wait, Princess, we should... Cole stopped. Arguing was pointless. He was a security asset, a tracker, and she was, for better or worse, following a trail. He fell into step behind her, his blaster sweeping their path, his eyes scanning the dense alien canopy. They moved for hours. The jungle floor rose, the mud giving way to ancient black stone cut smooth. This was not natural. They were on a path. The path led to a clearing, dominated by a single impossibly stark object. A pylon. It was 30 feet high, a spear of pure black obsidian, untouched by the millennia of jungle growth that surrounded it. It hummed. Ilari, Kalira breathed, her hand instinctively moving to her chest. It was a design so ancient it was pre-classical, from the first expansion, before the bloodlines had become diluted. A beacon? Cole asked, scanning the perimeter. A weapon? An archive. She stepped forward, drawn by a force she did not understand. The pylon was inert, its surface smooth as a mirror, reflecting the hostile green sky. Well, poke it, see if it's working, Cole muttered. Kalira ignored him. She reached out a hand, her long, elegant fingers tracing the cold surface. Nothing. The cut on her temple, the one she had gotten in the crash, had opened again, a small trickle of blue blood. It dripped from her brow and landed on the stone. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the hum changed. It deepened into a resonant musical chord. The obsidian surface of the pylon flickered, turning from black to a deep, translucent violet. Light bloomed within it. Ancient Ilari script, characters she had only seen in the deepest, most forbidden historical texts, began to scroll across the surface. "What's it say?" Cole asked, moving closer. "Is it a map? An SOS?" Kaelira was transfixed, her eyes wide, translating the archaic dialect. Her face, usually a mask of perfect control, had gone pale. "It is a record," she said, her voice a hollow whisper. "A testament from the first queen, Isildra." "The first queen? Your great something?" "She built the vaults," Kaelira said, her mind reeling. This is a lie. Our entire history is a lie." "Join the club," Cole said. "Omo, what lie?" "Varzoon," she said, the name feeling like poison on her tongue. "The beast. We were taught it was a guardian, a loyal protector of the Dominion's greatest secrets, bound by blood and honor." She shook her head, her eyes scanning the text. "It is not a guardian. It is a test, a filter, a failsafe." "A failsafe for what?" "For us," she replied, her voice cracking. Isildra feared the bloodlines would decay. She feared they would grow decadent or weak or ambitious, just like... Her voice trailed off. "Just like we have. Varzoon was not made to keep invaders out. It was made to keep the Ilari out. It was designed to judge the worthiness of those who seek core tech. It was made to slaughter the impure. I'm proud. Unworthy." A cold dread settled over Cole. "So thousands of people it supposedly killed were Ilari, all of them," Kaelira finished. "Traitors, counselors, even princes of the blood who went to the vault seeking power for themselves. The beast, it culled them. It has been culling us for centuries." Cole ran a hand through his matted hair. "Okay, great. So, your ancestors were paranoid, and your family pet is a sentient judgment engine. Does it say where this thing is, in case we want to send it a holiday card?" Kaelira's fingers found a new set of data scrolling at the bottom of the pylon. Coordinates. A complex stellar map that made him dizzy just looking at it. "It is there. The Varzoon Vault. System 001. "Never heard of it." "It orbits a dead star," Kaelira said, tracing the spiraling map, "which in turn is caught in the gravity well of a singularity. A black hole." "A dead star and a black hole," Cole summarized. "Guarded by a psycho-robot monster. Your ancestors really didn't want visitors. How do you even get in?" Kaelira pointed to the final line of the ancient script. It was a single, elegant command, an instruction for the vault's mechanism. "It is a bloodlock. Access is permitted. Only to a living key of the first blood." She turned to him, the full, horrifying weight of their situation landing on her. "It is accessible only by a living Ilari royal." "You," Cole said, his voice flat. "It needs you." The Glory's Edge was a graveyard. The Grand Coriolis Ballroom was a mangled, blackened wound, its kilometer-high dome of smart glass shattered, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. In the temporary command center, Counselor Xylus, his face a mask of calculated grief, addressed a secure channel to the Ilari homeworld. "A tragedy," he said, his voice smooth and somber. "A cowardly Terran attack. They sabotaged the station, and in the ensuing chaos, the princess. She was lost. Vorek is dead. The entire diplomatic mission is a failure." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. But the Dominion must endure. I will take on her burdens and his. I will return home to stabilize the council. He cut the connection. His aide, a young, nervous Ilari, shimmered into view. My lord, the aide stammered. The recovery teams, they report nothing. The skimmer's trail was lost in the storm. They are presumed dead. Presumed, Xylus said, a thin, cold smile touching his lips. He had arranged the attack. He had planted the explosives. Vorek had been a fool, loyal to a dying bloodline. Kaelira had been a roadblock. Her death gives me the regency. Her survival would have been inconvenient. Send the signal to General Malachor. Tell him the path to the throne is clear, and the vault will soon be his. Miles away, in Admiral Thorne's private quarters. The mood was not one of grief, but of cold, pure fury. Thorne stared at the tactical display, at the last known trajectory of the stolen skimmer. Draven, he spat. He's not a soldier, he's sick. Sir, an intelligence officer said, the Ilari are broadcasting on all channels and they're reporting the princess is killed in action. They're blaming us for the attack and recalling their entire fleet. Thorne looked up, his eyes like chips of ice. They're lying, or they're stupid. Draven doesn't die in a skimmer crash on a backwater moon. He's a survivor. It's the only thing he's good at. He paced the room. He didn't crash. He fled, and he took the asset with him. The asset, sir? The princess. Thorne slammed his fist on the console. She's the key to the vault. We knew that. Now. Draven knows it too. He's gone rogue, and he's just taken the most valuable hostage in the galaxy. He turned to the officer. I want my best Black Ops recovery team. Alpha Squad. Tell them it's a retrieval mission. Find Draven. Secure the princess. And not one word of this gets out. As far as the galaxy is concerned, the princess and the merc are dead. It's useful fiction. They had been walking for 3 days since leaving the archive. The jungle had changed, the dark, menacing flora giving way to a wide, deceptively beautiful swamp. The air was thick with mist, and the ground was a treacherous soup of mud and stagnant water. Kaelira was exhausted, her royal-bred stamina pushed to its limit. Cole, though walking with a pained limp, seemed to draw energy from the sheer awfulness of the situation. He pushed them forward relentlessly. The swamp became eerily beautiful. The mist swirled with soft, phosphorescent lights. The water was clear, and beneath its surface, plants glowed with a gentle, pulsing white light. This is wrong, Cole muttered, his blaster raised. This is too pretty. Kaelira was barely listening. She was so tired. Her feet were numb, her body a single dull ache. Through the mist, she saw something, a shape, an Ilari palace, its silver spires rising from the water, and on the balcony, her father, the Emperor. He was beckoning to her, his face kind. Father, she whispered, her voice breaking. She took a step forward, into the luminous water. I am here. Kaelira, no. Cole's voice was a roar. It shattered the illusion. It's a lure, a trap. He lunged, tackling her around the waist, shoving her sideways onto a small, solid island of black rock. His momentum carried him forward, skidding on the mud. He landed, half in, half out, in the shallow, glowing water. He screamed. It was a raw, agonizing sound that ripped through the quiet swamp. Kaelira scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding. The water around Cole was moving. It was not water. It was a sentient, fungal mass. Pale, rope-like tendrils, the source of the beautiful white light, shot from the mud, wrapping around his legs, his chest, his arms. They pulsed, and where they touched his fatigues, the material smoked and dissolved. Cole fired his blaster, but the energy bolt sizzled uselessly against the wet mass. His eyes rolled back in his head. The tendrils were not just holding him, they were poisoning him. Kaelira did not think. She did not calculate. She ignited the vibro knife. She leapt into the swamp. The mass was cold, and it pulsed with a malevolent intelligence. She hacked at the tendrils. They were tough, like wet, living leather. For every one she served, 3 more seemed to take its place, lashing at her. "Cole!" she screamed. He was fading, his body convulsing. She saw it then, in the center of the mass, a brighter, thicker node, a heart. She plunged the knife deep into the glowing fungal core. The swamp screamed. It was a psychic, agonizing sound that threw Kaelira to her knees. Her hands clapped over her ears. The beautiful lights extinguished instantly. The tendrils turned black, withered, and released their grip on Cole, slumping back into the mud. The swamp was dead. Kaelira grabbed the front of Cole's ruined fatigues. He was a dead weight. She dragged him, her muscles screaming in protest, back onto the solid rock. He was alive, but just barely. His breathing was a shallow, wet rattle. His skin was deathly pale, but black. Vein-like lines were already spreading from the wounds on his chest, a dark map of the poison in his system. He was burning with fever. She found another cave, this one dry. She dragged him inside. She built a fire, a primitive, savage act that her tutors would have called appalling. For 2 days, she did not rest. She was no longer a princess. She was a nurse, a guardian. She used her knife to cut away his shirt. She saw the scars, old white lines from blades, pucker marks from plasma burns, a life of violence written on his skin. She cleaned the black fungal poison from the new wounds. She forced water from her canteen past his cracked lips. She watched the man who had called her a relic, who had insulted her and saved her, tremble and fight for every single breath. The fever took him. He was not on the moon. He was back in a war, in a colony she had never heard of. "Koros," he murmured, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at the cave roof. He was seeing ghosts. The signal was late. Intel said the evac wasn't clear, but the clock was red, had to be done. His hand, burning with fever, shot out and gripped her arm. His eyes focused on her, but he was seeing someone else. "An entire colony," he whispered, his voice breaking a terrible, rattling sound. 3,000 souls. I gave the order. They said the rebels were shielded in the civilian sector, but they weren't. They were just families. Sleeping. He choked on the word. I killed them. I killed them all. By mistake. He collapsed back onto the stony ground, the raw, agonizing confession hanging in the silent cave. Kaelira stared at him. 3,000. It was a rounding error in the wars of the Alari Dominion. Her ancestors had depopulated entire worlds for matters of honor. She had been taught that such losses were the price of an empire, and this man, this Terran savage, was broken by it. The man she had dismissed as a brute, a killer, had a conscience more profound, more agonizingly real than anyone in her cold, glittering court. The image of her court, her prison, hit her with the force of a physical blow. The sterile, polished ice throne room, her father, the emperor, his face impassive, and standing beside him, General Malachor. His face was a map of heroic, brutal scars, his ceremonial armor black and unforgiving. He was the greatest warrior in the Dominion. He was her betrothed. She has spirit, Malachor had said, his voice like stones grinding together. He had been looking at her not as a person, but as a prize, a broodmare for a new, stronger line. It will serve me well in the birthing chambers. Her father had smiled, a thin, cold gesture. She is pure-blooded, general. Her control is flawless. She will do her duty. Her duty. Her training. Desire is weakness. Emotion is a flaw in the code. A princess of the Alari is a tool of the state. She feels nothing. She looked down at the Terran. He was the antithesis of Malachor. He was all flaw, all weakness, all raw, exposed, agonizing feeling. His cynicism was not a philosophy, it was a shield, and it was broken. His physical presence, the heat of his skin, the scent of sweat and blood and fever. It did not repel her. It rattled her. It called to a part of her she thought had been starved to death. The fever broke on the third day. He was sleeping, a true healing sleep. The black lines had receded. She was cleaning the last of the poison from a wound on his chest, her fingers tracing the line of an old white scar. Her hand was trembling. Her hand, which had held steady as she signed treaties, as she faced down assassins, as she accepted her own exile, was shaking. He stirred, his gray eyes opening. They were no longer cloudy with fever. They were clear, and he was watching her. He saw her. He saw the tremble. He saw the conflict in her face. He did not speak. She leaned down. It was the most reckless, uncontrolled, terrifying act of her entire life. It was a betrayal of her bloodline, her training, her duty. Princess Kalira kissed him. It was not a soft, romantic gesture. It was a desperate, breathless, clumsy collision. I was afraid. Her fingers, so cold, clenched in the fabric of his ruined fatigues, pressing against the unfamiliar heat of his skin, against his scars. A jolt, a current of pure biological data shot through her. This was it. This was the loss of control, the weakness her tutors had warned her against. It was terrifying. It was magnificent. She pulled back as if she had been struck, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She scrambled to her feet, moving to the far side of the small cave. She pressed her back against the cold stone, her entire body shaking. She was terrified, not of him, of herself. They did not speak of it. For another day, they recovered. Cole's strength returned with a veteran's speed. The body was a machine, and he was used to abuse. He sat by the fire, cleaning his blaster, the action automatic, grounding. "That archive," he said, his voice rougher than usual. He did not look at her. "The coordinates, the dead star, the singularity." "Yes," Kalira replied, her voice tight. She was still on her side of the cave, rebuilding her armor, piece by piece. "And the bloodlock," he continued, "only accessible by a living Alari royal." He finally looked up, his gray eyes clear and sharp. "Well, princess, it's a hell of a key card. Pity we're stranded on a mud ball 50 million light years from the lock." Kalira stood, her spine straightening, the princess returning. "Do not assume, Terran, we are not—" She stopped. She froze. A sound, not the jungle, not the wind, a low, rhythmic, mechanical whine, growing louder, the unmistakable air-tearing sound of repulsor engines. Cole was on his feet in an instant, his blaster in his hand, moving to the cave mouth. They peered out. A ship was descending through the tattered canopy, its landing lights cutting through the lingering mist. It was not a sleek Federation recovery vessel. It was angular, brutal, and painted in the dark, blood red of the Alari Dominion fleet. "Friends of yours?" Cole muttered, moving to stand in front of her. "I have no friends," Kalira said, but a flicker of something, not just recognition, but a desperate, dangerous hope crossed her face. "But I may have an ally." The Alari ship descended with a precise, lethal grace, its crimson-red armor plating a stark wound against the jungle's green. The landing ramp hissed open before the engines had fully silenced. deploying a squad of Ilari shock troops. They fanned out, their movements economical and brutal, their red lacquered helmets scanning the perimeter. They were not a rescue team. They were an occupying force. A single figure walked down the ramp, her boots clicking on the metal with sharp authority. She was tall, encased in the functional midnight black armor of an Ilari fleet commander. She pulled off her helmet, revealing a severe face, sharp cheekbones, and hair the color of a raven's wing, pulled back in a tight military knot. Kylira stepped out of the cave, her spine straightening, the mud-stained survivor transforming back into a princess before Cole's eyes. "Commander Valus," Kylira said. Her voice was pure ice, devoid of relief. "Highness," Valus replied, her gaze raking over Kylira, cataloging the torn robes, the bloodstain on her temple. Her eyes flickered with something, disdain, or perhaps just surprise, before settling on Cole, who had emerged from the cave behind her, his blaster held loosely at his side. Valus's hand dropped to her sidearm. "You are well. This creature, did it harm you? This creature, Commander, is the only reason I am alive," Kylira said, her voice sharp. "He is Cole Draven. He is with me." "He is Terran," Valus stated, as if it were a diagnosis for a terminal disease. "He is my ward," Kylira snapped, using an ancient, unassailable term of Ilari law. "He will be treated as such. We are leaving this planet now. Set a course for the palace on Alar Prime." Valus paused, her dark eyes unblinking. "Highness, there is no palace, not for you. Counselor Xylus has declared you dead. He has branded you a traitor who conspired with the Terran Federation to assassinate the Diplomatic Council. He has consolidated power. Alar Prime is hostile." Kylira's expression did not change, but the air around her grew 10 degrees colder. She had been betrayed. Her people, her council, her world. Gone. "I see." She processed the information in a fraction of a second. The hope she had felt, the desperate wish for home, was a lie. "Then Xylus is a traitor, and we will proceed with the contingency." Valus's eyebrows rose, just slightly. "The contingency?" "The vault," Kylira said, turning to look at Cole. "We are going to the vault of Varzoon." The ship, the Vindicator, was a predator. Its corridors were lit by pulsing deep red emergency lights, its air heavy with the scent of ozone and cold, recycled metal. It was a warship, and Cole Draven was a prisoner. They had not put him in binders, but the 2 shock troopers standing outside his quarters were an eloquent statement. His quarters were a 6x4 metal box with a cot. They had taken his blaster. He had been interrogated. Valus had done it herself, in a sterile, white-lit room. She had been precise, methodical, and utterly without empathy. She had asked about the Glory's Edge, about his mission, about his relationship with the princess. Cole had given her his name, his rank, former, and a string of sarcastic, unhelpful answers. He had survived interrogations by species that could boil his blood with their minds. A cold, uptight Ilari commander was just another Tuesday. What worried him was Kylira. She had not come. She had disappeared into the command structure of the ship, leaving him to the wolves, the kiss in the cave, the fever, the shared desperation. It felt like it had happened on a different planet, in a different lifetime. The door to his cell hissed open. It was Kylira. She was no longer the mud-stained survivor. She was immaculate. She wore a severe black Ilari uniform, identical to Valus's, her silver-white hair bound in a tight, precise knot. The cut on her temple was gone, healed by advanced medical tech. She was the princess again. Cold, beautiful, and 1,000,000 miles away. You are a complication, she said, remaining in the doorway. The two guards stood behind her, their faces hidden by their crimson masks. That's what my last CO said, Cole replied, not moving from the cot. Good to know some things are universal. Valus does not trust you. She believes you are a Federation agent who has manipulated me. She believes you planted the archive on the jungle moon as a Terran trap. She wants to space you. She's got a great personality, Cole said. You two must have been having fun at parties. I told her you are essential to my survival, that you are bound to me. I defended you. My ward. Thanks. Makes me feel like a charity case, or a pet. He stood up, closing the distance between them. The guards tensed, but Kaylira held up a hand. Cole stopped, a foot from her. He was taller than her, but in this corridor, in her uniform, on her ship, she held all the power. He could smell the clean, sterile scent of the ship on her. The scent of the jungle, of mud and fire and fear was gone. This isn't a game. Terran, she said, her voice a low, furious whisper. The woman you kissed in the cave does not exist up here. That was a moment of weakness, a flaw in the code. It is finished. Is it? He asked, his voice quiet. Her violet eyes were hard. You are in my world now, Cole. My world is not a jungle. It is a nest of vipers, and I am the biggest snake. I am using you, just as Valus is using me, just as Xylas is using the council. That is how my people survive. She looked at him, her gaze so cold it should have left frost on his skin. Do not expect affection to keep you alive. Expect me to do what is necessary, and expect me to discard you when you are no longer useful. That is the only truth you will find here. She turned, and the door hissed shut, plunging him back into the red-lit darkness. The Vindicator dropped out of hyperspace into hell. There was no other word for it. They were at the edge of System 001, but there was no light. In the center of the system, a singularity, a perfect gravitational wound in space-time, devoured all light. The view screen could not process it. It was a hole of absolute terrifying blackness, surrounded by a swirling chaotic halo of bent, lensed starlight from nebulae millions of light years away. Orbiting this nightmare, in a stable, impossible decay, was a dead star. It was a blackened, cracked cinder, but it was not cold. From the cracks in its surface, visible only on thermal sensors, a strange dark fire burned, plumes of black flame, radiation so intense it was visible as a distortion in space, licked out from the dead star, lashing at the void. The bridge of the Vindicator was silent. Even Valus looked unnerved. That is the vault? Valus asked, her voice tight. That is the cradle, Kaylira said. She stood at the front view screen, her hands clasped behind her back. The vault itself is on a station, hidden in the dead star's orbit. And then, they all felt it. It started not as a sound, but as a pressure. A sudden agonizing migraine that hit every Alari on the bridge at the same time. The pilots gripped their consoles. Valus grunted, one hand flying to her temple. Kaylira cried out. It was a small, sharp sound, and she fell to her knees, her hands pressed against her skull. Cole, who had been brought to the bridge under guard, was the only one unaffected. He moved to her, but the two guards leveled their rifles at him, stopping him cold. Highness! Valus shouted, fighting through the pain. It is here, Kaylira panted, her eyes squeezed shut. It knows. What do you know? Cole demanded. Varzoon. She looked up, her face pale, her violet eyes wide with a pain that was not just physical. It was a scream, a psychic, mind-tearing scream broadcast from the dead star. It was not just a beast. It was lonely. It was in agony. It was furious. "It is bonded to the bloodline," she whispered, the realization dawning on her. "Isildur, she bound it not just to the vault, but to us, to her descendants. It feels our pain, and we feel its rage." The psychic scream pulsed, and Kelyra collapsed unconscious onto the metal deck. That night, the ship was a tomb. Valus had taken them to a safe orbit, just at the edge of the beast's psychic range, a place where the scream was a dull, throbbing headache instead of a crippling assault. Kelyra had locked herself in her quarters. She was terrified, not of the beast, not of the mission. She was terrified of the connection. The beast's rage felt too much like her own. Its cold, unending isolation was a mirror. Her door hissed open. It was Cole. He had, apparently, dealt with the two guards. One was slumped against the far bulkhead, groaning, his helmet off. The other was nowhere to be seen. "You need to stop doing that," she said, not turning from the viewport, which showed the swirling, distorted chaos of the singularity. "You need to stop locking yourself in rooms with your own ghosts," he shot back. He stalked into the room. He was done being the prisoner. He was done being the ward. "You should not be here," she said, her voice flat. "Too bad. We're talking." He grabbed her arm and spun her around. The Ice Princess was back, but her eyes were red-rimmed. "What was that back in the corridor? Don't expect affection. A flaw in the code." "It was the truth," she said, trying to pull her arm free. He did not let go. "It was a lie," he snarled. "It was the most pathetic, terrified lie I've ever heard. You'd rather face that thing out there." He jabbed a finger toward the viewport. "Than admit you felt something, that you needed something. You're a coward." The word hit her like a physical slap. A coward. Her voice rose, her Alari accent thickening with pure, distilled fury. "I was sold like a relic. I was hunted by my own people. I am facing a monster my ancestors created, and I am doing it alone. You call that cowardice? I call it hiding," he shouted, his face inches from hers. "You're hiding behind duty. You're hiding behind your title. You're hiding behind that cold, perfect bullshit mask. You kissed me in that cave because for 1 second, you were real, and it scared you so much you had to run back to your cage." "You know nothing of my cage," she screamed, finally ripping her arm free. "You, the emotional, uncontrolled, savage human. You feel everything. You wallow in it. You think that makes you better than me?" She jabbed a finger at his chest, right over the scars she had cleaned. "You're a killer. You told me yourself. You murdered an entire colony. You are a butcher who just learned how to cry about it. That does not make you noble, Terran. It just makes you pathetic." The words struck him, and the anger drained from his face, replaced by a sudden, stark stillness. He had been in firefights that hurt less. He flinched, a small, almost invisible movement, but she saw it, and the ice around her heart did not just crack. It shattered. The fury vanished, replaced by a devastating, hollow horror at what she had said, at what she had become. The psychic scream of the beast, the loneliness, her own self-loathing, it had all poured out, and she had used it as a weapon. "Cole," she whispered, her face crumpled. "The princess of the Alari, the tool of the state, the woman bred for perfect control, broke. A single, ragged sob tore itself from her throat, and then another. She did not just cry. She collapsed, her legs giving way as a lifetime of repressed, frozen, agonizing grief poured out. He caught her. Before she hit the floor, he was there, his arms, the arms of the killer she had just condemned, wrapped around her. He did not speak. He did not offer absolution. He did not tell her it was all right. He just held her. He held her as she wept for her lost home, for her betrayal, for the murder of her life. He held her as she grieved for the cold, empty woman she had been forced to be. He just held her. His own pain, a silent, steady anchor, and let her fall apart. It was a long time before the sobs quieted. She was empty. He was still holding her, one hand tangled in her silver-white hair, the other pressed against the small of her back. The air in the room was electric with everything that had been said, and everything that had not. She looked up at him. Her face was a ruin. Her makeup was gone. Her eyes were red. Her armor was gone. She was just Kalyra. He looked down at her. He saw the woman in the cave. The embrace changed. It was no longer comfortable. It was a new, terrifying, desperate current. It was the intense, slow, undeniable magnetism of two broken things, two lonely survivors, finding a shore. He did not kiss her. He waited. He gave power to her. She rose up on her toes, her hands sliding from his chest to his neck. She kissed him. This time there was no fear, no hesitation, and it was a conscious choice. It was a surrender, and it was intense. It was slow. It was a drowning. He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, her uniform, his fatigues, a barrier of a world that no longer mattered. He carried her to the cot, and they fell onto it. It was a tangle of power and vulnerability. It was the shedding of skins, of uniforms, of scars. His hands, rough and calloused, explored the pale, perfect skin she had hidden from the galaxy. Her hands, elegant and cold, learned the geography of his scars, the proof of his flawed, violent human life. It was a collision of worlds, of ice and fire, of control and chaos. It was not love. It was needed. It was a raw, primal, and deeply intimate act of rebellion against the cold, screaming void outside the ship. Afterward, in the deep silence, in the red glow of the corridor lights, she lay against his chest. She listened to the steady, strong beat of his heart, and she wept again. Silently, this time. Not for grief, but for shame. "This is weakness," she whispered, the tears tracing a path down her cheek. "My entire life, I was taught to need, to feel. It is the ultimate failure of my bloodline." Cole lay still, his hand stroking her hair. He waited until she was finished. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to look at him. His gray eyes were clear. "Then need me again," he said. Miles away, on the bridge. Commander Valus watched the tactical display. The sensor readings of the dead star were on one screen. The internal schematic of the ship, showing 2 life signs in the princess's quarters, was on another. She opened a secure, encrypted channel, one that bypassed the ship's logs entirely. A dark, imposing figure flickered to life on her private screen. His face was a map of heroic, brutal scars. General Malachor. "General," Valus said, her voice crisp, professional. "Report, Commander," Malachor's voice growled. "They are here. The princess and the Terran. They all have formed an attachment. As you predicted, it has weakened her resolve." "She was always weak," Malachor spat. "Like her father. And the Terran? He is a fool, a savage. They are occupied. They will be cooperative. They believe I am loyal. You are loyal, Valus, to the true dominion, to the strength I will bring. Let them open the vault. Let the living key and her pet soldier retrieve the core tech. Once it is in your hands, I will eliminate them both." Valus finished, her voice as cold as the void. "The beast, the Terran, and the princess. I will tie up all the loose ends." "See that you do," Malachor said. "The future of the Alari Empire depends on it." The signal cut, leaving Valus alone in the red-lit darkness, her reflection staring back at her from the blank, dark screen. The shuttle detached from the Vindicator with a metallic groan, dropping like a stone toward the surface of the ancient station. Below them, the dead star burned with a terrifying, inverted radiance. It was a sphere of charcoal and obsidian, crisscrossed by fissures that bled shadow rather than light. The station itself was not built upon a moon or a rock, but was a construct of the old empire, a sprawling lattice of silver spires and docking rings anchored in the gravity well of the singularity itself. Inside the shuttle, the air was frigid. Kalyra sat strapped into the pilot's harness, her hands moving over the controls with a rigidity that betrayed her terror. She was back in her uniform, the armor of the Alari commander, but Cole could see the tremor in her fingers. He sat behind her, checking the charge on a stolen plasma rifle Valus had grudgingly allowed him. Valus stood between them, gripping a handhold, her face a mask of fanatical anticipation. To her, this was not a tomb, it was a reliquary. They touched down on a landing pad that hung over an abyss of swirling gravitational distortion. The ramp hissed open and the sound hit them instantly. It was the wind of a dead world, a thin, high-pitched keen that vibrated in their teeth. Kalyra stepped out first. The gravity here was artificial, heavy, and erratic. Ahead of them lay the path to the vault, a long, narrow bridge of white stone spanning a chasm, leading to a massive, monolithic spire that pierced the sky. This place is a graveyard, Cole thought, his boots ringing on the stone. He kept his weapon low, his eyes scanning the twisting architecture. It was too quiet. The psychic scream they had felt in orbit was gone, replaced by a suffocating, heavy silence. It was the silence of a predator holding its breath. They reached the base of the spire. It was a seamless wall of black metal, etched with circuitry that glowed with a faint, dying violet light. In the center stood a pedestal, a basin carved from a single diamond. Kalyra approached it. She looked small against the backdrop of the dead star. She pulled a ceremonial dagger from her belt, the blade humming with a sonic edge. "Do not hesitate," Valus commanded, her voice cutting through the wind. "The timeline is critical." Kalyra looked back at Cole. Her eyes were wide, violet pools of fear and resolve. She was not looking at him for permission, but for an anchor. He gave her a single, sharp nod. "I am here." She turned back to the basin. "I am Kalyra of the line of Isildra," she recited, her voice trembling but clear. "I bring the blood of the first. I seek the burden of the vault." She drew the blade across her palm. It was a deep, deliberate cut. She clenched her fist over the diamond basin, and her blue blood, luminous and thick, dripped onto the stone. Drop, drop, drop. For a span of 10 seconds, nothing happened. The wind howled. The dead star churned. Then, the world tilted. A deep, resonant thrum started in the soles of their boots, vibrating up through their bones. The black metal of the spire flushed with sudden, violent color. Crimson, violet, gold. The circuitry ignited, racing upward like a lightning strike in reverse. The diamond basin absorbed the blood, glowing with a blinding intensity. The silence broke. A sound erupted from the earth beneath the station, a grinding, tearing noise of metal shearing against rock. The massive blast doors at the base of the spire, doors that had been sealed for 1,000 years, groaned open. But it was not just a door opening, it was a cage unlocking. From the darkness within the spire, a sensation washed over them. It was the psychic scream they had felt on the ship, but magnified 1,000 times. It was a wave of pure, distilled agony. It tasted like copper and ash. It felt like grief. Cole staggered, dropping to one knee, clutching his head. Valus cried out, stumbling back. Only Kaelira stood firm, though her body shook violently. The blood connection anchored her, but it also made her the lightning rod for the creature's pain. "It is awake," she whispered. Something moved in the shadows of the great doorway. It was massive. First came a limb, thick as a tree trunk but made of articulated polished chrome and dripping synthetic muscle. Then another. The beast pulled itself into the light of the dead star. Varzoon was a nightmare of engineering. It stood 20 feet tall at the shoulder, a quadrupedal engine of destruction resembling a Terran wolf, but twisted by eons of Alari science. Its hide was a patchwork of ancient, impenetrable armor and exposed, pulsating biological tissue. Cables and tubes wove through its flesh like external veins. But it was the face that stopped Cole's heart. It was not a machine. It was a mask of white porcelain, smooth and featureless except for 6 burning vertical slits for eyes. And behind those eyes lay an intelligence that was vast, ancient, and utterly insane. The beast lowered its massive head, sniffing the air. It did not smell with a nose. It sampled the genetic and psychic resonance of the intruders. It turned its gaze to Kaelira. The blood on her hand sang to it. It let out a low, chittering growl that sounded like scraping metal. It recognized her. It hated her. It was bound to serve her, and it despised the servitude. Then, the 6 burning eyes snapped to Cole. The beast froze, its head cocked to the side, the servos whining. It took a step toward him, ignoring the Alari women entirely. It opened its maw, revealing rows of vibrating monofilament teeth and a throat that glowed with the energy of a contained star. Confused, Kaelira gasped, clutching her bleeding hand. "It smells like the Alari bloodline. But him, it does not know what he is. Human DNA. It is an anomaly." Valus recovered first. She raised her weapon, not at the beast, but toward the open door. "The path is open. Move." The beast roared, a sound wave that shattered the glass on Cole's wrist comp. It lunged, not at them, but at the space where they had been standing a second before. Its claws tore a gouge in the white stone deep enough to bury a tank. "Run!" Cole screamed. He grabbed Kaelira's uninjured hand and sprinted toward the open maw of the spire. They dove past the thrashing, confused monster, slipping into the darkness of the vault just as a massive metal tail slammed into the entryway, collapsing the archway and sealing them in. They were inside. The interior of the vault was not a cave. It was a machine. The walls were lined with banks of ancient data cores, towering stories high. The air was filled with floating motes of light, hard light data streams that illuminated the path forward. They ran. The floor beneath them was a grid of glass, revealing a drop of endless depth. Far below, immense gears turned slowly, grinding out the time of a dead empire. Behind them, the crash of rock and tearing metal echoed. Varzoon was digging. It was coming for them. "We need the core," Kaelira panted, her face pale. She pressed a hand to her side, her breath hitching. "The connection to the beast. It is inside my head. I can feel it clawing at the stone. I can feel it wanting to kill us. Keep moving." Valus barked from behind them. She was calm, her pistol drawn, checking the corners with military precision. The central chamber is ahead. They burst into a circular rotunda. In the center, suspended in a field of anti-gravity, the prize hovered. It was small, a sphere no larger than a human head, composed of shifting, impossible geometric shapes. It glowed with a soft, blue light. The core tech, the device that could rewrite the physics of a solar system, the weapon that could save the Alari Dominion or burn it to ash. "There," Kaelira said, stumbling toward the controls. "We have to initiate the containment protocol. I have to authorize the release." She stepped up to the console. Her hands flew across the holographic interface. The sphere slowed its rotation. The protective field dropped. Cole stood guard at the entrance to the chamber, his rifle trained on the dark tunnel they had come from. The sounds of the beast were getting louder. He could hear the scrape of claws on glass. "Hurry up, Princess," he called out, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Our friend is knocking at the door, and he doesn't sound happy." "It is done," Kaylira said. She reached out and took the sphere. It hummed in her hands. "We have it. Now we must find the secondary exit. The maintenance shafts lead to the lower hangars." She turned, a triumphant smile touching her lips. It was the first time Cole had seen her truly smile. She looked at Velis. "Commander, we have—" The crack of the plasma discharge was deafening in the enclosed space. Kaylira spun around, the force of the impact throwing her backward. She slammed into the console and slid to the floor. A smoking black hole had appeared in the side of her uniform, just above her hip. Blue blood splattered across the pristine white floor. Cole froze. His brain tried to process the image. Kaylira down, Velis standing there, her pistol raised, smoke curling from the barrel. "No!" Cole roared. He raised his rifle, but Velis was faster. She fired a second shot, hitting Cole's weapon. The rifle exploded in his hands, sending him reeling back, shrapnel tearing into his arms. Velis walked forward, her face impassive. She did not look at Cole. She looked at Kaylira, who was gasping for air, clutching the wound in her side. "Why?" Kaylira wheezed, blue blood bubbling between her fingers. You are loyal. I am loyal to the Dominion," Velis said coldly. She reached down and plucked the core sphere from Kaylira's weakening grip. "But the Dominion cannot be ruled by a relic. You are weak. Kaylira, you are a diplomat in an age of war. You fell in love with a savage. You allowed your blood to be tainted by sentiment." Velis inspected the sphere, satisfied. General Malachor understands strength. He will use this to scour the Federation from the stars. He will build a new empire, and he does not need a princess to do it. She turned to Cole, who was struggling to stand, blood dripping from his hands. "And you, Terran, you were a useful distraction. The beast will be here in moments. I imagine it will enjoy finding you." Velis turned and sprinted toward a service hatch on the far side of the room. She punched a code into the panel, and the heavy blast door slid open. She stepped through and fired into the control panel. The door slammed shut and locked, sealing her escape. Cole ignored her. He ignored the pain in his arms. He scrambled across the floor to Kaylira. She was pale, her skin turning a translucent gray. The wound was bad, cauterized at the edges but deep. Hey, look at me," Cole said, his voice shaking. He ripped a strip of fabric from his fatigue jacket and pressed it against the wound. Kaylira cried out, a sharp, jagged sound. "It burns," she whispered. "Cole, leave me. The beast—" "Shut up," Cole said. He was not gentle. He was terrified. "You don't get to give orders right now. You're relieved of command." The room shook. A massive crack appeared in the glass floor near the entrance. A metal claw, 2 feet long, punched through from below. Varzoon was here. Cole looked around. The main exit was blocked by the monster. The service hatch was sealed by Velis. He scanned the room. There, a ventilation duct, high on the wall, its grate rusted. He grabbed Kaylira. "Up! We're going up!" He pulled her to her feet. She screamed, her legs buckling. "I cannot!" "Yes, you can!" he snarled. He bent down and scooped her up, throwing her over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. She was light, terrifyingly light. He gritted his teeth against the pain in his own arms and ran. He climbed the maintenance ladder one-handed, balancing her weight. He kicked the grate open and hauled them both into the dark, cramping tunnel just as the floor of the rotunda shattered. Below them, the beast erupted into the room. It roared, a sound of pure frustration. It smelled blood. It smelled like the prize that had been stolen. It began to tear the room apart. Cole crawled. The tunnel was narrow, filled with cables and pipes that hissed with steam. He dragged himself forward, Kalira's arm draped over his neck. She was slipping in and out of consciousness. "Talk to me," he grunted, dragging them through a tight bend. "Cole," she murmured. Her voice was slurred. "I said talk to me. Tell me about the palace. Tell me about the food. Is it true you people eat silver dust for dessert?" "No," she whispered, a faint, delirious laugh bubbling up. "It is platinum flakes. Silver is for commoners. Platinum. Right. Snobs." Cole wheezed, pushing past a tangle of wires. "Keep talking. Tell me about your first pet. Did you have a pet, or just a robotic tutor?" "I had a hound," she said, her voice growing fainter. "A bio-sculpted hound. It bit my father. They disintegrated it." Cole winced. "Rough childhood. Remind me to introduce you to a golden retriever if we get out of this. They don't bite emperors." "Usually." He felt her weight grow heavier. Her head lolled against his shoulder. "Kalira!" he shouted, the panic rising in his throat. "Stay awake. That is a direct order." "I am tired. Cole, it hurts. I know it hurts. That means you're alive. Dead people don't hurt." He stopped crawling for a second to adjust his grip. He could feel the warmth of her blood soaking through his shirt. "Listen to me. You are not dying in a ventilation shaft. It's not dignified. Think of the headlines. Princess found in ductwork. It's embarrassing. You are insufferable," she breathed. "Good. Keep hating me. Hate keeps you awake." They reached a junction. The tunnel widened into a small maintenance alcove. Cole collapsed, his strength failing. He slid down the wall, cradling Kalira in his lap. The air here was cooler. They were close to the surface. He checked her wound. The bleeding had slowed, but she had lost too much. Her skin was cold as ice. He brushed the silver-white hair from her face. She opened her eyes. They were dull, the violet light fading to a gray. "We stopped," she whispered. "Just a pit stop," Cole said, catching my breath. "I'm getting old, you know. My back isn't what it used to be." She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his face. Her fingers left bloody smears on his cheek. You carried me. I'm a glorified pack mule, remember? Part of the job description." "Why?" she asked. Her eyes searched his. "Why do you fight so hard? For a relic? For a stranger?" Cole looked at her. He looked at the blood on his chest, at the dirt on her face. He smiled, a crooked, sad expression. "Because you're not a relic," he said softly. "And you stopped being a stranger the minute you looked at me in that ballroom and called me a savage." She let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a sob. "I was bred to be perfect. Cole, genetic selection, mental conditioning. I was designed to be the perfect vessel for the Empire, to have no flaws, no cracks." "Then maybe perfect is overrated," Cole whispered. He took her hand, intertwining his dirty, scarred fingers with her elegant, blood-stained ones. "I like the cracks. That's where the light gets in. Or in our case, the mud." She closed her eyes, a single tear escaping. "I am afraid, Cole. Not of death, but of failing. Of leaving you alone with that thing." "You're not leaving me," he said fiercely. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. You can't die. Not until you kiss me like you mean it again. That was the deal. You owe me. She managed a weak smile. A debt. Of honor. Exactly, and I collect. He kissed her forehead. It was a benediction. A promise. He shifted, groaning as he stood up. He lifted her again. Let's go. Princess. Time to finish this. They emerged from the ventilation outlet into the blinding, weird light of the dead star. They were on a lower gantry, a landing platform jutting out from the side of the spire. The wind whipped at them, tearing at their clothes. And there, waiting for them at the edge of the platform, stood Velis. She had summoned a small extraction craft. It hovered nearby, its engines whining. She held the core sphere in one hand. She looked at Cole, dragging the dying princess onto the metal deck, and shook her head. Persistent, she shouted over the wind. I will give you that. Terran, you are persistent. Cole gently lowered Kaelira behind a crate. Stay here, he whispered. He stood up. He had no weapon. His arms were shredded. He was exhausted. He walked toward Velis. Step away from the ship. Velis, Cole called out. His voice was flat, deadly. Or what? You will bleed on me? Velis sneered. She holstered her pistol, confident in her superiority. An Alari commander against an unarmed, wounded human. It was not even a contest. I will grant you a warrior's death. Draven, it is more than you deserve. She drew a combat baton from her belt. It extended with a snap, the tip glowing with disruptor energy. She lunged. She was fast, faster than any human Cole had ever fought. She moved like liquid mercury. She swung the baton, aiming for his head. Cole didn't block. He didn't dodge. He stepped into the strike. He took the blow on his shoulder, the disruptor energy searing his flesh, but he didn't stop. He slammed his body into hers, a tackle born of pure, desperate rage. They hit the deck hard. Velis snarled, driving her knee into his gut. She was stronger than him. She flipped him over, pinning him, and raised the baton for a killing blow. Die, savage, she screamed. Cole looked up at her. He grabbed her wrist, holding the baton inches from his face. His muscles screamed, Not today! He gritted out. Suddenly, the platform shuddered. The extraction ship behind Velis veered away, its pilot panicking. A shadow fell over them, a shadow so large it blotted out the dead star. Velis looked up. Her eyes went wide. The color drained from her face. Varzoon had climbed the outside of the spire. It hung from the side of the structure, its massive claws dug into the metal. It loomed over the platform, a god of metal and hate. It was bleeding from a dozen wounds where the rock had torn its armor, but its 6 burning eyes were fixed on one thing. Not Cole, not the core. It was looking at Kaelira, who had dragged herself out from behind the crate. She was on her knees, her hand pressed to her bleeding side, staring up at the beast. The connection, the pain. The beast roared. It was not a sound of hunger. It was a sound of recognition. It felt like Kaelira's agony. It felt like a hole in her side. And it knew, with its ancient bonded instinct, who had put it there. It looked at Velis. Velis scrambled off Cole, backing away. No, no, I am of the Dominion. I serve the... The beast did not care about her politics. It moved with terrifying speed. A claw, the size of a skimmer, swept across the platform. Velis didn't even have time to scream. The impact was wet and final. She was swatted from the air like an insect, her body broken instantly, thrown off the edge of the platform and into the gravity well of the singularity below. The core sphere skittered across the deck, coming to rest near the edge. Silence returned to the platform. The beast dropped from the spire. landing on the deck with a tremor that knocked Cole flat. It stood there, breathing heavily, steam venting from its jaws. It turned its massive head toward Kaylira. She looked up at it. She did not flinch. She was too weak to run. "Varzoon," she whispered. The beast took a step toward her. It lowered its head. Its jaws opened. Cole scrambled to his feet. He was battered, burned, and bleeding. But he moved. He put himself between the princess and the monster. He stood alone against the unbeatable beast. He had no weapon. He had no plan. He just had a refusal to let her die. He spread his arms. "Get back," he shouted at the machine god. "Do you want her? You have to go through me." The beast paused. The 6 eyes narrowed, focusing on the small, defiant human. It hissed, a sound of confusion and irritation. It tilted its head, the servos whining. It did not attack. It seemed baffled. Why did this anomaly protect the source of the pain? Behind Cole, Kaylira's vision went dark. She saw the silhouette of the man against the burning light of the dead star, standing before the monster, Cole. She breathed. Then, she collapsed. Cole heard her fall. He didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the beast. He took a step forward. "Come on, you ugly bastard," Cole whispered, his hands curling into fists. "Let's dance." He began to walk toward the beast. The beast did not attack. It stood, a 20-foot monument of chrome and synthetic rage, its 6 burning eyes fixed on the small, bleeding, weaponless man. Varzoon was a creature of code, of bloodlines, of ancient programmed directives. It understood threats. It understood Ilari. It understood slaughter. It did not understand Cole Draven. This anomaly, this creature of soft tissue and loud, chaotic emotions, was protecting the bloodline, the very thing the beast was bonded to. It was an equation that was not solved. Cole kept his arms spread wide. He was a target, a shield. He did not look back at Kaylira. He could not. If he did, his resolve would break. He could hear her breathing, a shallow, wet rattle. He could feel her dying. "So," Cole called out, his voice hoarse, carried away by the thin, screaming wind of the dead star. "You're the unbeatable beast. You're a lot shorter in person." Varzoon's head tilted, the servos in its neck whining. It took a step, its massive 3-jointed leg clicking on the metal gantry. It was probing, testing. "Come on," Cole whispered. "Come on, you ugly bastard. Leave her alone. Just focus on me. Right here." He needed a weapon. He needed a miracle. His eyes darted to the side, 10 feet away near the precipice that dropped into the singularity. Lay the core, the small sphere of shifting, impossible geometry. It glowed with a soft, steady, blue light. It was the prize. It was the bomb. It was, he realized, the only thing on this platform that was not either him, the beast, or the princess. It was his only chance. He faked a lunge to the left. The beast's head snapped, tracking the movement. Cole dove right. He slid across the metal, his shredded fatigues catching on the rivets, his fingers raw and bleeding, closed around the smooth, humming surface of the core. It felt warm. It felt alive. Varzoon roared. It had been tricked. This was not the behavior of a bonded royal. This was not the logic of an Ilari. This was a misdirection. This was chaos. The beast lunged, its primary scythe-like claw descending like a guillotine. Cole did not have time to stand. He was on his back, the core held tight in both hands. He had no idea how it worked. He had no training. He did not think. He felt. He saw the claw coming and he shoved. He did not shove with his arms. He shoved with his will. The core responded, a wave of invisible kinetic force, a localized instantaneous bubble of gravity erupted from the sphere. It was not a blast. It was a push. The wave hit the beast's descending limb. The claw, moving at lethal speed, was not stopped, but it slowed. It was like a hammer hitting water instead of air. The beast's perfect ancient targeting was thrown off by a fraction of a second, by a fraction of an inch. The claw struck the gantry exactly where Cole's head had been. The metal platform shrieked, buckled, and tore, the claw punching a hole straight through into the void below. Cole was alive. He scrambled backward, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He was breathing hard. He looked at the sphere in his hands. "Okay," he panted. "Okay. I think I'm getting the hang of this." Varzoon pulled its claw back from the ruined deck. It looked at the hole. It looked at Cole. And for the first time in 10,000 years, its code registered a new emotion. Annoyance. It attacked. It did not probe this time. It did not test. It moved with a speed that defied its size, a blur of white porcelain, black metal, and synthetic flesh. It was a storm of claws, a thrashing tail, and jaws that snapped with the sound of collapsing buildings. Cole was no longer a soldier. He was a dancer, a desperate, half-dead dancer. He used the core, he shoved, he pulled. He did not know what he was doing, but he was learning fast. The beast swiped. Cole pushed with the core, creating a wall of kinetic force. The claw hit it and was deflected, sparks flying as it scraped the spire. The beast stomped. Cole pulled, creating a gravity well, a patch of invisible ice. The beast's foot, weighing tons, skidded. It stumbled, its entire frame shuddering as it fought for balance. "Come on!" Cole yelled, his voice raw. He was laughing, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "Is that all you've got? I've been hit harder by a bartender in a port bar on Cygnus." He was lying. Every deflection, every near miss was still an impact. The shockwaves were breaking him. He felt his ribs crack. The shrapnel in his arms burned. He was a gnat, trying to turn a battleship. Varzoon opened its maw. The starfire in its throat began to glow. "Oh, no," Cole muttered. He raised the core, tried to push the energy back. But it was not a physical attack. It was a torrent of focused, superheated plasma. He dove. He was too slow. The blast hit the gantry, vaporizing a 10-foot section of the platform. The concussive force picked Cole up and threw him through the air like a doll. He slammed, back first, into the solid metal wall of the spire. He did not get up. He lay in a crumpled heap, the core rolling from his lax fingers. Varzoon lowered its head. The anomaly was neutralized. It took a step, then another, its massive metal and bone chassis moving toward the fallen man, behind the twisted metal shipping crate where Cole had left her. Kalyra's eyes fluttered open. Her world was a haze of blue-tinged pain. The wound in her side was a cold fire, stealing her breath. She tried to move, to call out. Her throat made no sound. Her body was in a prison, but she could see. She saw the beast, its back to her, advancing on the unmoving shape of the man. She saw Cole, a broken pile of rags against the ancient wall. He had been so loud, so defiant. Now he was still. He was dead. The thought cut through her agony. He is dead. But as the beast loomed over him, its shadow falling across his body, the shape moved. Cole's hand twitched. He coughed, a wet, bloody sound. He pushed himself up, one-handed, onto his knees. He was shaking. His uniform was black with his own blood. He was shattered. He was broken. But he was standing. He got to his feet, swaying. His hand braced against the wall. He looked at the monster, and he smiled, a bloody, defiant human grin. Kalyra watched, her consciousness fading in and out. She saw the scene as if in a dream. The tiny, broken man, refusing to die. The massive, unbeatable god machine. The words bubbled up from her memory, from the legends of her people, from the very core of her being. She did not have the strength to speak them. but her lips formed the shape. The alien beast was said to be unbeatable. The beast raised its foot to crush the man. It was done. It was ending the anomaly. Cole, pinned against the wall, his lungs failing, had one last, desperate idea. He looked at the core, lying just out of reach. He could not get to it. He looked at the wall he was leaning on, the wall of the spire, the ancient black metal, etched with dormant circuitry, the same circuitry that had lit up when she had bled on the pedestal. Well, he wheezed, when in doubt. He was out of option. He was out of time. He was out of strength. He balled his hand into a fist, and he punched the wall. It was a weak, pathetic blow. But on the other hand, he still had the ceremonial dagger he had taken from Kaylira back in the shuttle. He had forgotten it was there. He had punched the wall, and the sonic blade, still active, had pierced the metal. It was not the punch. It was the contact, the sonic frequency of the Alari blade, combined with the human blood on his knuckles. It was a new key. The spire sang. It was not a sound. It was a release. A wave of pure white light and ancient cold memory erupted from the point of impact. It washed over the gantry, over Cole, over Kaylira, and over Varzoon. The beast froze. It recoiled, its foot hovering in the air. It let out a high-pitched, agonizing whine like a tortured animal. It was not a creature of memory, and it was a creature of now. The light took shape. It was not a hologram. It was a psychic echo imprinted on the very stone of the station. In their minds, they saw her, Queen Isildra, the first. She stood in the light, tall and severe, her robes like liquid shadow, her eyes the same cold, burning violet as Kaylira's. She was not looking at them. She was looking at the beast. This was the moment of its creation, a memory trapped in a loop. Her voice filled their heads. It was not a voice, but a concept, a string of pure, cold, perfect logic. I have made you. Varzoon, she projected. You are my final perfect weapon. You are the lock. You are the guardian of the core. You are bonded to my blood, and you are programmed by my code. You will obey the blood. You will protect the code. The beast whined, its head low, remembering its master. But the blood will weaken. The Queen's echo continued. The code will corrupt. My children will grow decadent. They will come for the core, not to save the Dominion, but to save themselves. And you, my perfect weapon, will judge them. You will cull the unworthy. You will be unbeatable. The beast looked up, its 6 eyes burning with the pride of its purpose. You are a perfect equation, my Varzoon. You cannot be solved by a variable you already contain. No Ilari, no matter their strength, can defeat you. No Ilari logic, no matter its cunning, can outthink you. You will always win. The echo of the Queen turned, her cold psychic gaze sweeping across the gantry. She could not see them, but they could feel her. But the galaxy is vast. Anomaly is inevitable. A day will come when a creature stands before you that is not of my blood, not of my code. A creature that is not bound by logic or honor or programming. A creature of pure, unfiltered, chaotic choice. Cole looked up, his blood dripping on the deck. He was listening. You, Varzoon, are an equation. This creature will be a statistical impossibility. It will be a rounding error. It will be a thing that fights, not for power, not for history, not for code, but for a reason you cannot compute. You cannot be defeated by what you know. The Queen's voice concluded, a cold, final judgment. You can only be undone by what you do not. You are logical. You will be beaten by madness. You are a program. You will be beaten by a choice. A raw choice. The echo faded. The light snapped back into the spire. The gantry was dark again, lit only by the dead star. Silence. Cole understood. He looked at the beast. The beast looked at him. Varzoon had processed the memory. It, too, now understood. Its 10,000-year confusion was gone. This anomaly was not a mistake. It was the answer. It was the final variable. It was the only thing in the universe that was a true threat. The beast's programming, its entire purpose, simplified. It was no longer a guardian. It was an executioner. Its one true enemy was standing right in front of it. It threw back its head, and it roared. It was a sound of pure, final, absolute purpose. It was going to annihilate the anomaly. Cole, however, was calm. The pain was gone, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. He knew what he had to do. He saw it all. The Koros colony, the 3,000 dead, the guilt he had carried. I am a killer who just learned how to cry about it. Kelyra's words. Maybe she was right. But he was not a killer today. He was a solution, a statistical impossibility. He pushed himself off the wall. He stumbled, his legs shaking, and retrieved the core. The sphere felt different now. It was not a weapon, it was a key. He looked over at Kelyra. She was still, so pale. Not until you kiss me like you mean it again. You owe me. He turned to face the beast. Varzoon opened its mouth. The furnace in its throat ignited. The light was blinding, a rising sun of pure white-hot plasma, preparing to wash the gantry clean. Cole did not raise the core to defend himself. He did not try to run. He sacrificed his survival instinct and he made a raw choice. He walked toward the beast. The beast hesitated. The plasma charge in its throat faltered. Its ancient, logical brain stalled. This was not possible. This was not a variable. This was a violation of physics. All living things fled from death. This creature was walking into it. Cole kept walking. 1 step, 2 steps. The heat was searing, blistering his skin. His hair was smoking. He did not stop. He was at the mouth. He stepped onto the beast's lower jaw, a platform of humming, vibrating metal. He was inside the furnace. He looked up, past the rows of monofilament teeth, deep in the creature's glowing throat. He saw it. The brainstem, a nexus of biological tissue and glowing neural cables, the heart of the machine. Varzoon, in its frozen logical paralysis, could not stop him. It could not comprehend what was happening. A creature of raw choice. Cole raised the core sphere high. It was not a neural grenade. It was core tech, the device that could rewrite the physics of a solar system. He did not throw it. He plunged it down. He shoved the sphere, the ultimate power of the old empire, deep into the neural nexus of the beast. That's for Koros, he whispered. And this is for her. He activated the core. He did not push. He did not pull. He let it go. He released all the power, all at once. There was a moment of absolute perfect silence. The light in the beast's throat did not explode. It imploded. The plasma furnace, the starfire, was snuffed out, consumed by the pinprick of pure gravitational energy. The beast's body went rigid. A shudder ran through its 20-foot frame. The 6 burning slits in its porcelain mask flickered. One by one, they went dark. Varzoon, the unbeatable beast, the lock of the First Empire, was dead. Its programming was finished. Its equation was solved. It did not fall in pieces. It just stopped. The machine died. It slumped forward, a mountain of inert dead metal. Its massive head crashed onto the gantry, shaking the entire spire, the metal groaning under the new, dead weight. Kelyra's eyes opened. The psychic scream, the agonizing connection to the beast, was gone. The silence in her head was vast, cold, and empty. She saw the dead monster, its head, The size of her shuttle lay mere feet away. She looked for Cole. He was not on the gantry. He was not by the wall. He was gone. The monster was dead, but he was gone. The realization, the final agonizing loss, gave her a strength she did not possess. She pushed herself up onto one elbow, her wound screaming. Cole! Her voice, raw and broken, tore through the silence. It was the only sound on the dead, empty platform. She screamed his name again, a long, ragged wail of pure human grief. And then, her strength gave out. The pain, the loss, the blood. It was too much. Her vision, already blurry, narrowed to a pinprick. The dead star, the dead beast, the empty gantry, it all faded. It went dark. The silence was the first wound. For her entire life, Kaylira's mind had been a fortress of cold, perfect calculation. Then, the beast had come, and the psychic scream of its 10,000-year agony had torn that fortress down. It had been a constant, agonizing shriek in the back of her consciousness. Now, there was nothing. The silence was a vacuum. It was a cold, vast and terrifying emptiness. It was the sound of being truly, completely alone. Pain was the second. It bloomed in her side, a white-hot, singular fire that cut through the darkness. It was an anchor. It was the only thing that told her she was still alive. Kaylira's eyes snapped open. The sky was a swirling, distorted nightmare of bent starlight and black fire, the dead star. The singularity. The wind was a high, thin keen across the metal gantry. She was lying on her back, her blood, blue and dark, puddled on the metal beside her. She remembered the beast, Valus, Cole. She sat up. The movement was a mistake. The world spun and she cried out, clutching the wound in her side. It was a ragged, torn hole. The hasty patch Cole had applied was soaked through, but she was alive. She looked across the platform. It was a ruin. The gantry was fractured, sections missing, dropping off into the void. And there, a mountain of inert metal and dead flesh, was Varzoon. Its massive, porcelain-masked head crashed onto the deck, its jaws still open. It was dead. Utterly. Finally. Dead. Kaylira's gaze snapped from the beast, searching, scanning the wreckage. He was gone. The spot by the wall where he had stood, where he had defied the monster, was empty. The blast. The implosion. No, she whispered. The word was a dry croak. She looked at the gantry edge, where the platform had been vaporized. Had he fallen? Was he consumed? Cole! Her voice was a raw, broken thing, instantly snatched away by the wind. She tried to stand, her legs buckling. She fell to her hands and knees. She began to crawl. She crawled over the buckled metal, her wounded side screaming. She was no longer a princess. She was not a commander. She was a survivor, and she was searching for her only anchor. Cole! She screamed again, this time with the full force of her lungs. A sound. It was not the wind. It was not the groaning of the station. It was a low, human groan of agony. It came from under the beast. When Varzoon's head had crashed down, a sheet of its armor plating, a piece of its neck, the size of a shuttle door, had been blown free, skidding across the deck. It had come to rest against a cargo crate, and under it was a hand. Kaylira's heart stopped. She found a strength she did not know she possessed. She scrambled the last few feet. She grabbed the edge of the metal plate. It was impossibly heavy. "I will not," she growled, her voice a low, primal sound. "Let you die." She put her back into it. She used her legs. She was a Lari. She was of the first blood. She was strong. She screamed, a raw warrior's cry, and shoved. The plate grated, sliding a single precious foot. It was enough. He was there. He was lying in a heap, his body twisted, He had been shielded from the worst of the implosion by the beast's own jaw, but he was broken. His skin was seared, burned from the plasma. His fatigues were shredded and smoking. His right arm was bent at an angle that was sickeningly wrong. But he was breathing, a shallow, ragged, almost imperceptible rise and fall of his chest. Kalyra collapsed beside him. The relief was so profound, so absolute. It was a pain all its own. She touched his face, her fingers, stained with her own blue blood, trembling as they traced the burns on his cheek. His skin was hot, too hot. He was alive, but barely. She leaned down, her silver-white hair, matted with sweat and blood, falling around them. She pressed her forehead to his. "You won," she whispered, her voice cracking. The tears came, hot and fast, tracing paths through the dirt on her face, mingling with the blood on his. "You won. You fool." She kissed him. It was not the desperate, frightened kiss of the cave, or the passionate, healing kiss of the vindicator. It was a kiss of profound, agonizing gratitude. It was a claim. He did not stir. She pulled back. Her mind, the cold, calculating part of her, began to reboot. He was dying, and she was dying, and they were on a dead station in orbit of a black hole with no ship. She looked around. The core. Where was the core? It was lying near the beast's open mouth, unharmed. Its soft blue light was the only calm thing in the entire system. And then she saw the shuttle, their original shuttle, the one they had arrived in. It was still on the upper gantry, where they had left it. It was 200 yards away and one level up. She could not carry him. She could not even walk. She looked at the beast. Its dead, porcelain face stared at the void. "You are an equation," the first queen had said. Kalyra began to crawl. She crawled to the core. She took it. It was warm, and it pulsed with a steady, quiet power. She crawled back to Cole. She could not lift him. She put her arms under his shoulders, and she began to drag him. It took her an hour of agony, an hour of gritting her teeth and pulling, one bloody inch at a time. She dragged him across the fractured gantry. She dragged him up the emergency ramp to the upper platform. Her wound tore open. She left a trail of her own blood, mixed with his, across the white stone. She got him to the shuttle ramp. She collapsed, her strength gone. She used her last fading burst of will to open the outer hatch. She pulled him inside. She sealed the door, and the roar of the wind was cut off. The sudden silence was a blessing. She fell into the pilot's seat. Her hands, shaking so violently she could barely see, found the comms panel. The Vindicator was still in orbit. Valus was dead, but the ship was hers. She activated the distress beacon, keyed to her own command signature. "This is Princess Kalyra," she breathed into the speaker, her voice a dry rasp. I have the core. Commander Valus is dead. Send a medical team, now." She looked back at Cole. He was unconscious, a broken shape on the floor of her shuttle. She had done it. She held on for 2 minutes, until the green confirmation light of the Vindicator's reply flashed on her console. Then, her duty done. She finally, blessedly, let the darkness take her. When Cole woke, the first thing he noticed was the smell. It was not ozone, or blood, or the cold metal and rage smell of the beast. It was clean, sterile, antiseptic. He was in a medbay, a high-tech, Ilari medbay. The light was a soft, healing white. A diagnostic field hummed over his body, knitting bone and sealing burns. He tried to sit up. "I would not recommend that," a voice said. He turned his head. Kalyra was sitting in a chair beside his bio bed. She was not in a uniform. She was in simple, loose-fitting gray medical robes. Her silver-white hair was unbound, falling over her shoulders. Her skin was pale, but the wound on her temple was gone. A small, glowing patch covered her side. She looked real. "You're alive," he croaked. His throat felt like it had been scoured with sand. "So are you," she replied. A small, faint smile touched her lips. "Though, for the record, your arm was broken in 3 places. You had severe plasma burns across 40% of your body, and your lungs were a mess. The medics said you are, and I quote, an anomaly of stubbornness." "And you?" he asked, his voice rough. "I was bleeding to death," she said, her voice quiet. "But I am a Larry. We are durable. You, on the other hand, are remarkably fragile." "Good to know," he rasped. He looked at her, really looked at her. The ice was gone. The cold, calculating princess had been burned away. The woman who sat before him was calm, her violet eyes clear, and held a depth he had never seen before. "The core?" he asked. "In the ship's vault. Secured," she said. "And Malachor? Thorn? The rest of the galaxy?" "Waiting," Kalira said, and her face hardened. "Just a fraction. We have been invited to a diplomatic summit at the Chorus Junction. It seems everyone is very eager to congratulate us on our survival and to claim their prize." "They won't get it," Cole said. "Oh, no," Kalira agreed. "They will not." The conference room at Chorus Junction was a masterpiece of sterile, neutral diplomacy. It was a circle, with no head on the table. General Malachor was there, in his full black and crimson battle armor. He was the picture of a Larry's strength, his scarred face a mask of brutal impatience. Admiral Thorn was there, his blue and gold Federation uniform immaculate. His cold eyes radiated pure, bureaucratic hunger. They had been waiting for an hour. The doors hissed open. Kalira entered. She was not in robes or a uniform. She wore simple black trousers and a high-collared white tunic, practical, elegant, and severe. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like a warrior, not a prize. And at her side, walking with a slight limp, his right arm in a high-tech sling, was Cole Draven. He wore his old scuffed fatigues, which the Vindicator's fabricators had replicated. He was scared, but his cynical gray eyes were steady. Malachor stood, his chair scraping on the floor. "Kalira, you are alive. A miracle." He did not look at Cole. "She is," Thorn said, his voice clipped. "As is Agent Draven. A remarkable turn of events." Kalira did not sit. She walked to the center of the room. Cole stood at her back. "I have the core tech," she announced, her voice ringing with a new, quiet authority. It was not the cold command of the princess. It was the steel of a survivor. "Then you will deliver it to me," Malachor growled. "It is the right of the Dominion. With it, I will crush Xylas, unite our people, and purge the Federation from our space." "That right is suspended, General," Thorn cut in. "The Federation does not recognize your claim. The Glory's Edge was a joint facility. The core tech, by galactic treaty, belongs to the body that secured it. That body is the Federation, Agent Draven." "I'm not your agent. Thorn," Cole said, his voice a low growl. "Kalira," Malachor said, his voice softening, becoming the voice of a soldier trying to reason with a child. "You are my betrothed. You are the blood. Give me the core. We will rule together. We will restore our honor." Kalira looked at the two men, two sides of the same, ancient, greedy coin, the ambition that had birthed the beast. "When I was at the vault," Kalira said, her voice silencing the room, "I learned the truth. Varzoon was not a guardian. It was a filter. It was an equation, designed by the first queen to protect the dominion not from its enemies but from itself. It was built to judge our ambition, to cull our pride. It was built to stop men like you, General. Malacor's face darkened with fury. She turned to Thorn. And it was built because she feared men like you, men who see everything as a tool, a weapon, a piece on a game board. You are the logic that makes such monsters necessary. She held up a hand. A neutral-robed arbiter of the Chorus Junction entered, carrying a containment field. The blue shifting sphere of the core hovered within it. The core tech is not a prize, Kaelira declared. It is a burden, and neither of you are worthy to carry it. This is treason. Kaelira, Malachor roared, his hand moving to his sidearm. This is balance, she replied. The core will be handed over to the Junction Arbiters. It will be sealed in a neutral vault, under a temporal lock, for 1,000 years, until both our species have proven they are evolved enough to deserve it. You cannot, Thorn shouted, rising to his feet. I can, Kaelira said. I am the last living key of the First Blood. My authority in this matter is absolute. She looked at Malachor, her violet eyes turning to ice. As for our bond, General, the woman you were promised is dead. She died in a jungle, and she was buried in a gantry. I am what survived, and I reject you. I reject your traditions, and I reject your dying empire. She turned and walked out of the room. Cole looked at the two stunned, furious men. He gave them a lazy, two-fingered salute. Gentlemen, he said, and he followed her. They met again, hours later, in the main concourse. Kaelira had finished her business with the Arbiters. Cole had just come from a final unpleasant meeting. So, she said, falling into step beside him, the galaxy is balanced. For now, Cole grunted. He rolled his shoulder, the sling gone, but the stiffness remained. Admiral Thorn seemed displeased, Kaelira noted. He'll get over it. He offered me a commission, high command, a desk, a real shiny uniform. And what did you tell him? She asked, a small smile playing on her lips. I told him, Cole said, that I'm done being his gun. I'm done being a tool, for anyone. He looked at her. I'm retired. Retired, she repeated, tasting the word. An interesting concept. Malachor has been branded a traitor by the new Alari Council. They offered me the throne, to be their empress. Cole stopped, his eyebrows rising. Empress Kaelira, it has a ring. I told them no, she said simply. I told them the age of emperors and relics is over. It is time for something new. I, too, am retired. They stood in silence, two refugees in the middle of a bustling, indifferent starport. They had no home, no people, no mission. They had nothing, except for each other. So, Cole said, a slow, uncharacteristic smile spreading across his face. Retired. What now? Empress? Kaelira looked at him, the man who had seen her at her worst, the man who had called her a coward and then died for her. I have no idea, she said. I hear the outer rim is quiet. The moon was called Atia Prime. It had two suns, one gold, one blue, that painted the sky in shades of violet and rose. The air was clean, and the hills were covered in tall, rust-colored grass that whispered in the wind. They had a house. It was not a palace. It was not a barracks. It was built of stone and wood, and it overlooked a wide, placid sea. It had been 1 year. Cole was on his knees, wrestling with a faulty atmospheric condenser. He was covered in grease, and his knuckles were bloody. The scars on his arms had faded, but they were still there. You are using the wrong modulator, Kalira said. She was standing on the porch, holding 2 glasses of chilled nectar. She wore simple woven trousers and a tunic. Her hair was loose. The wound on her side was a thin, silver-white line, a matching scar to his. I'm fixing it, Cole grunted, whacking the machine with a wrench. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to work. It would work, she said, walking over to him. If you aligned the energy matrix, you are just hitting it. He sat back on his heels, wiping sweat and grease from his forehead. It's the human method, percussive maintenance. She handed him a glass. She smiled. It was a real smile, soft and unguarded. It was a smile he had earned. Humans, she teased, her voice light, always thinking they can win impossible fights with the wrong tools. Cole took the glass, his scarred hand brushing hers. He looked up at her, at the woman he had pulled from a swamp, the woman who had dragged him from death. He stood up, his gaze steady. We don't always win, he said, his voice quiet. Just when it matters. He leaned in and kissed her. It was a kiss of slow, easy peace. There was no desperation, no fear. It was just home. Later, as the twin suns began to set, they walked. They walked along the ridge that overlooked their small valley. The wind was cool. They came to a place, a small clearing, where they had built a monument. It was not a statue and it was not a plaque. It was the bones of Varzoon. They had paid a fortune to have the massive porcelain mask and the 2 great metal claws salvaged from the dead station and brought here. It was their reminder. It was their trophy. It was the gravestone of the lives they had left behind. They stood before it, the setting suns glinting off the white porcelain. It was silent, its 6 eyes dark, its rage finally truly gone. Kalira looked at the dead beast, and then at the man beside her. His hand found hers. His fingers, scarred and rough, intertwined with her, elegant and strong. They stood there for a long time, watching the sky burn. They were 2 broken, scarred, impossible survivors, a statistical anomaly. They were no longer alone.